Gluttonous, flatulent, secretly intelligent, Pumbaa is an unforgettable character. His comedic timing is impeccable, weaving together perfectly with his partner Timon. His exaggerated expressions and innocent gullibility have induced belly laughs. But who was responsible for bringing such a hilarious character to life? Let's find out. Tony Bancroft grew up in Orange County with his twin brother Tom. Growing up, the two were competitive with drawing, like most boys were with sports.
Just like some brothers are with throwing a football or playing soccer or something like that, we were competitive with our drawings. Literally, iron sharpens iron. We were always constantly over each other's shoulders, like, oh, don't do that, try this, and oh, this would be funnier.
I credit a lot of my success to the dynamic that Tom and I share, Tony says. We have grown in our talent level and abilities because we work so closely together. They both enrolled in the character animation program at CalArts, a college in California for visual and performing arts students. Tony ended with a summer job as a production assistant with filmmaker Ralph Bakshi and later landed an internship in California with Disney Feature Animation. The first character Tony worked on was Frank, the frill-necked lizard in Rescuers Down Under.
I always did the comedy characters. Just like in live action, a director, actually in those days in the 90s, directors would cast animators based on their skill sets. And I was really good with comedy. I always loved to do comedy. And so I was kind of typecast, if you will, as a comedy guy.
He went to animate other Disney characters, including Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast and Iago in Aladdin. When production for The Lion King started, Tony asked to work on Zazu. Tony recalls, Pumbaa and Timon, even at an early stage of the film, were the popular breakout characters, and they seemed out of my reach to even request as a first-time supervising animator. Having just finished animating Iago, I thought, well, Iago's a bird, and Zazu's a bird, maybe I have a shot. I was totally taken by surprise when the directors called me to offer me the character of Pumbaa. It was one of the happiest days of my life. Tony started designing Pumbaa by studying warthogs.
Studying animal reference for how, warthogs walk and run and how they use their tails and how they, turn their heads and things like that. I'm studying their bone structure and their muscles and the muscle groups and what makes them move and how they tick.
He spent almost 6 months at the beginning of the production just researching warthogs and African animals. His next step was to begin caricaturing the warthog. Ernie Sabella, the voice of Pumbaa, was a significant influence. He has a very round and appealing smile that I knew just had to be part of Pumbaa, Tony says. Bancroft flew out to New York with Mike Surrey, the animator for Timon, where both Ernie Sabella and Nathan Lane were performing in Guys and Dolls on Broadway. It was a great education for me to see Ernie performing, Tony recalls, to study his movements and actions. Then, when I got back to my animation desk, I would try to incorporate as much of Ernie's acting style into my scenes.
So I get down to that minutia, but then I'm also looking at who is the character of Pumbaa, not only the voice, but, what is his role? He's basically like a big, football player jock. This is how the directors pitched Pumbaa and Timon to me and Mike Surrey was, these guys are like bachelors. They're like, in college together. They're hanging out. They don't want, girls or relationships tying them down. They're just slobs that live in their dorm room and have fun and have raucous kind of parties, So that was that was the overall picture of Pumbaa and Timon. Now you put those characters into a world of Africa and the jungle, and all of a sudden you have a Hakuna Matata lifestyle that erupts.
Much like the voice actors, Ernie Sabella and Nathan Lane, Tony and Timon's animator, Michael Surrey, also animated in the same room.
My best friend, a guy named Mike Surrey, was the animator of Timon, and we shared an office, and we were like Pumbaa and Timon. We really were. We already had that relationship, and we were buddies, and we played off of each other, and we were just like Pumbaa and Timon already. That was one of the most memorable times I'll never forget.
Bancroft continued on to The Hunchback of Notre Dame, animating the gargoyles, but about 4 months in, he got an incredible offer. One day, Lion King director Rob Minkoff was walking out of the building with Tom Schumacher, the vice president of animation. Tom was looking for a co-director to work with Barry Cook on Mulan. So Schumacher asked, "We've talked about people, but we haven't found the right person to co-direct on Mulan. Can you think of anybody?" Rob had been impressed by Bancroft's work on Pumbaa. His reply was, "Well, how about Tony Bancroft?" It was because of this recommendation that the studio started to consider Tony for the job. They offered me the position, and I took it very excitedly. I was scared, but I took it.
That was an awesome experience, but it was also one of the most terrifying times in my life because I had never directed before. And Disney tapped me to be the co-director on this big Asian film. When I started on Mulan, I didn't know who she was. I didn't know hardly anything about Asian culture, never been to China. And all that changed in the next couple of years. Our whole team from day one with Mulan, we had this desire that we want to be culturally relevant. We want to be as accurate as possible. We want to bend over backwards to try and make sure that we don't try and change this story into what we think it should be, but we try and tell it from as much their perspective that we have the ability to do.
After directing, Emperor's New Groove allowed Tony to animate once again. To him, the film looked very funny, exciting, and more like a Warner Brothers short than a Disney feature. Tony was the supervising animator on Krunk. Tony's flair for comedy came in handy for this hapless, clumsy, and good-hearted henchman. Tony recalls, "This is the kind of character that I love to do. A scene stealer. A comic character that maybe doesn't have the main interest, but gets all the laughs."
I love that because you get a reaction from the audience. They either laugh or they don't, right?
Tony went on to be the supervising animator on Stuart Little 2. He started his own studio, Tunacious Family Entertainment, making commercials and shorts for Disney and Hasbro. Most recently, he directed Animal Crackers. He was an animator on Mary Poppins Returns, and in 2021, Space Jam. A new legacy will feature his animation talents. Tony's career has been full of creativity and opportunity. Because he moved up the ladder so fast, it allowed him to gain experience quickly. He uses his experience to help others with their careers. He does interviews, writes books, has a podcast, and teaches at Azusa Pacific University, all to encourage new generations of animators and directors. Thank you for watching this episode of Dizographies. Click the thumbs up button below if you liked it, and if you want to be notified when the next episode comes out, consider subscribing. Comment below with characters you would like to see us cover. Further reading and references are linked in the description. We hope to see you in another Dizography.